If you'd asked me this 7 years ago, I would have said tomorrow when the war began, but that's absolutely been done to death now. I think what's fantastic is streaming services like Stan and now even Netflix to an extent are kind of allowing screenmakers to make kind of more edgy television content. So for example, in the Wolf Creek series, I mean, there is no way that that could have been made for a commercial network television station or even a public service broadcaster. So the fact that there can be things now like the Wolf Creek series is amazing for Australian screen content.
Having lived here for 8 years, there is undoubtedly a wealth of stories. What sometimes stands in the way is that a lot of people still want to make films here the way Hollywood makes films, because they think that's the successful way of making films. I think that's a very big mistake.
I am always keen on diversity, so that's got lots of different dimensions to it. I grew up in Sydney and I still go back there for about a month every year. And I love Sydney, but I also, as one that's lived in Queensland for 25 years, I'm very aware of how Sydney, Melbourne in particular, with maybe Canberra in there, produces an enormous amount of our screen content. So I love to see Queensland stories. I love to see regional stories. I love to see Indigenous stories, films directed by women, films directed by people of all kinds of backgrounds, including those, you know, that may have been born somewhere else and then come to Australia.
There is an urge for the younger generation to understand their neighbours better. And with their neighbours, I mean the Asia Pacific around them. It's of course not the Anglo-Saxon highway anymore, so it's a different language and a different culture. Yet, you know, long-standing cultures as well. But I think the Australians can play a very good role of glue in that mechanism, I think, within the Asia Pacific. And they would be accepted as such as well, I'm sure. Because, you know, the very good reputation of their people.
I personally would love to see more Australian World War II stories. Australia's made a lot of kind of Anzac-based films, but a lot of our war movies have been focused on World War I. But there's a whole range of amazing stories from World War II that have never been told, from whether it's the story of the Sydney and its battle with the Cormorant to the Rats of Tobruk, to the fall of Singapore, to the battle for Darwin. There's so many stories there that filmmakers haven't made. And I do wonder whether that's been a question of budget in the past. The ability of the Australian film industry to make higher budget, action-based genres has been limited, but now with the producer offset, that's largely been removed. So I'd definitely love to see more Australian World War II stories. The other thing would be more maritime-based stories. The Australian continent has hundreds and hundreds of kind of seafaring stories, maritime stories from the 19th century, the 1800s, of shipwrecks and stories of kind of lost treasure and pirates and a whole range of stuff. There's so many shipwrecks around this country. I'd love to see movies that kind of depict that, from the stories of the whalers to shipwrecks, Dutch sailors on the Western Australian coast. I think there's a real area that could be looked at a lot more. And I think that comes out of, is a symptom of the fact that a lot of our stories in the past have really focused on that idea about, you know, the outback and the idea that that's central to telling our national stories. But as our stories become more outward focused, I'd love more stuff that kind of thinks about identity in Australian culture in different ways, and so looks at those questions about our maritime history, the history of Australians overseas, and so on.
Top of my head, one of the key things that this always has frustrated me whenever I've written for TV, for commercial TV in this country, is that we don't do holiday-specific episodes, and the reason for that is because a lot of our television is sold to the Middle East, so they're not going to buy a television series that has Christmas or Easter and celebrates Christianity in it. And I think we fall behind countries like America, where we're not able to explore our culture, our unique culture, in those things in TV. I often feel when I'm watching Australian TV now, because there's just so little of it made, I'm talking about drama here, that we are losing something culturally because we can't show these things. I mean, I know we had ABC dramas or comedies like A Moody Christmas, and that was great, that's very specific, but generally, no, we don't see the Christmas episode of this or that or whatever. And when I wrote for American TV, so say for example a show like The New Adventures of Flipper, when I worked on that, I wrote 3 episodes of that, and when they offered me, I did 1, and then they offered me 2 more episodes, and I said, okay, I want any holiday-specific episodes that you're going to do in that series. And so they said, okay, we'll do a Christmas one. And I said, okay, I want to write that one. And I remember a lot of my colleagues who weren't writing on that show poo-pooed me for doing that, but I had a very specific agenda for wanting to do so, which was when I knew, because it was holiday specific and it was Christmas, that it would be screened Christmas Eve, in America. So I flew over and I was there when it was screened on Christmas Eve, and the network rang me on Boxing Day, because that's not really a big deal holiday over there like it is here, and they said, oh, you'll be really, really happy because, 125 million people viewed tuned in to watch your episode last night. And I was devastated. I was really unhappy because I thought, there's 250 million people, what were the other ones doing? That's just, but then as a friend pointed out to me, that's 4 times, 5 times the size of the population of Australia. And you would never get that as a writer here. You only we have such a small viewing population.
I haven't yet seen Ali's Wedding, but I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And, a story from a comedy from the Muslim community, I want to see that, because I want to see kind of the complexity of who we are as a nation, and I want to see those stories represented on screen.
I think it's really difficult for any type of screen content to accurately reflect the diversity of Australia's population. While a lot of very good television has been made for children, I think it would be good to have television that also shows the diversity of Australian life in more detail.
So when it comes down to Australian stories, they should check in the first place if they have anything to do with where they are and who they are. So it's very much into identity and what's going on here. And I think from my point of view, a lot of people are still digesting here what's happened and what's maybe still happening at some level of the injustice has been gone with the, I would say, owners of the land. That's the best I can express it. So Aboriginal cinema is in itself, great stuff to, understand yourself better with, so that if you understand yourself better and how you connect to the world, that's something you can communicate to the world. I'm sure they would read this, and all kinds of stories. Lion this year was a very good example. Lion did great in China. Can you imagine? It's a small film, so to say, an Australian product. They should be proud of it, and it's a clear proof. It's not because of the Oscars that it did well in China. That's not the way it works in China. But it's a great sign that a film like that does well in China. So I think stories like that are the obvious good example. And we're very proud that we had one of our alumni producing that film, so it's great.